My mother always told me, life is hard, and sometimes it gets harder. Then we have to deal with it because it's the only life we have. How truthful her words can be during these circumstances of pandemic and isolation. Then, the idea of an autobiography speech is the chance to get to know each other from a distance. Even regularly, and college life keeps us so busy that it doesn't allow us to interact or to get to know each other better. We have our own worries and situations that we must face, and how to confront difficult situations, not exactly hard in during this pandemic, but these challenges allows us to see a different view to see the world around us. Let me begin by properly introducing myself. As you know, my name is Marcus Andrew Acosta. I am 22 years old and I am a junior student here at the FSU. I was born in Miami, Florida, in the US, and I lived a part of my childhood there until my family decided to move back to Panama. Now, my family is very large, and each of my parents have five siblings, each with their own kids. And the family has always been essential for us. Even though we live abroad, my parents would always keep in touch with them and let my sister and I know that even though our life in the US is temporary, we will return back home. Now, the time to move back to Panama was confusing and troublesome for me because I was used to having a small, intimate family circle. The noise and affections of the love and feelings of my many aunts and uncles took me by surprise. So, since the beginning, I felt completely lost. I thought that I would never fit in, nor that I would ever feel comfortable there. Nevertheless, as time passed by, I started to feel more comfortable and feel like I belonged there. My family learned to be more respectful for my personality and give me my own space. But definitely, my Aunt Ramona was there to help me with the new situations through my new environment. She was born deaf, and she knew how it felt to be different. But with the love and affection and cares of my grandmother and her many siblings, she found her place among them. She guided me through the ups and downs while I struggled through the many small changes at the same time. My Aunt Ramona gave me company and support, but I was so tired and frustrated that I took her for granted. Today, I would like to share with you how the tragic death of my Aunt Ramona had changed me into a better version of myself. I have changed some critical aspects of my personality that helped me from not only having and enjoying a loving family, but also to engage into new relationships. First, how not being flexible and to be resistant to new changes prevent me from having new experiences. Second, how not expressing my feelings and emotions towards my family prevent me from spending more time with them as much as I wanted. And lastly, how trying to be the best prevent me from fulfilling my personal needs and goals. My Aunt Ramona died a terrible accident alone, far away from everyone who loved her. She was radiant, healthy, and she always succeeded, even though everything was against her. Unfortunately, she left without saying goodbye, and I felt like I had some unfinished business with her. The death of my aunt forced me to deal with these situations on my own, and I was so mad and frustrated that she left without permission. I would need her, and she would not be there. I knew how much my mother and my aunts felt and suffered through her absence. but they were all together and they supported each other. As for me, I was in great grief, and everybody noticed it. I remember that my mother told me, and I quote, "You were very special to her. She would love you just the way you are. And it doesn't matter how much you change, she would always love you anyway." End quote. After that, I understood that I have to allow myself to be more flexible and to be less rigid, to adjust to the hard moments and changes that my Aunt Ramona have to go through during her life. I talked to my parents, and with their help, I was able to learn many different techniques that allow me to adapt to those changes in when it is situational. Little by little, I managed to get used to random situations such as changes in school or moving to a new house without having any anxiety. But most importantly, I wanted to try new things. I wanted to take risks and have new adventures, something totally out of my complicated and complex life. I guess the lack of flexibility was a consequence of my rigid and organized way of doing things. I always believed that having everything to put in place helped me to have a clear moment in my thoughts. I believe that it was also a reason which I have to express my feelings and emotions, not just for my Aunt Ramona, but also towards the ones who I love. After she died, I felt sad and unfortunate. I felt like I have some unfinished business with her. I never demonstrated my love and admiration towards her. I wanted to tell her how proud I was for her accomplishments in life. Unfortunately, as I mentioned before, I took her for granted. I always thought that she would be here right next to me. Or so I thought. After my aunt passed away, I realized how important it is not just to say, but to express and demonstrate the love, care, and affections towards the people that we love. The fragility of life makes it a must. I confronted the loss of my dear aunt with guilt and remorse for not being able to hug her more, for not being able to kiss her more, or to not demonstrate her for how much she meant for me. I know that I'm young and I still have much to learn from, but the death of my dear aunt made me realize that I don't have to be perfect, and I don't have to do everything right all the time. My parents are dedicated, hardworking doctors that always encourage my sister and myself to work as hard as we can and to always take responsibility for our actions. I grew up becoming very demanding with myself with expectations and goals. So if I've ever failed a test or an assignment or a project, I would feel sad and unfortunate. I never feel comfortable and never tolerated of being late or being second. And I was always scared of not fulfilling what I have in my mind. Once I lost my Aunt Ramona, I understood that the important thing is to not always to be the best, but it is to always try your very best. My grandmother told me an anecdote about my Aunt Ramona. She told me that when my aunt was a teenager, she always wanted to dance. But since she couldn't hear the rhythms of the music, things were complicated for her. Fortunately, my mother and my other aunts decided to create a choreography with her. And she was so happy on doing it right that she asked them to allow her to practice as many times as she wanted. My grandmother told me that at night, when everybody was asleep, she was up all night working on the project. Later on, my mother and my aunts presented the choreography in a family event, and all the guests congratulated my Aunt Ramona without ever noticing that she was deaf. Aunt Ramona told me once that the essential things in life are to accomplish for and appreciate everything that you have instead of suffering for the things that you've lost. Losing my aunt made me realize that I have to balance my life with joy, enthusiasm, as well as dedication and hard work. But I always keep myself in mind that all the accomplishments are worthy to enjoy. Now, I would like to conclude that sometimes we have to experience many difficult and painful situations in our life in order to grow stronger and wiser. As a famous saying states that after the storm, there comes the calm. Ever since my dear Aunt Ramona died in that terrible tragic accident, I have struggled and suffered. But in the end, I have become the better version of myself. I learned how to adapt to many different changes. I became more flexible and took many risks to have lots of adventures. Besides, it is important to know to express our many feelings and emotions towards our loved ones when we have the chance, because life is uncertain and we should never take anything for granted. And lastly, no matter what, I should always do my very best. Even though I don't have to necessarily be the best. Now, I encourage you to learn from my mistakes before it becomes too late for you. And I want you to open your minds and to express your feelings and emotions towards your loved ones and to always try your very best. I hope that you can appreciate what you have now as well as I do. Thank you.